Whitney Houston cried on stage at Madison Square Garden. Not from her own performance. She'd just delivered a flawless 4-minute a cappella national anthem that earned a 10-minute standing ovation. She cried because Prince had just done something with his voice she didn't know was humanly possible. No guitar, no piano, no instruments. 6 minutes of pure vocal mastery that included baritone gospel, falsetto screams, beatboxing, throat singing, and a 12-second sustained note that moved through 3 octaves. 5 different voices from one person who Whitney had claimed couldn't handle a cappella pressure. But Prince didn't perform this vocal masterclass to humiliate Whitney or prove her wrong. He did it because she'd challenged the one instrument he'd trained longest. Not his guitar, not his piano, but his voice. The first sound he'd ever learned to control, and the one he'd spent 40 years expanding beyond what traditional vocal training considered possible. January 2004. Entertainment Weekly's glossy cover featuring Whitney Houston in elegant black and white, the headline reading, "The Voice, 25 Years of Vocal Excellence." Inside, a feature on her greatest performances. What's yours? Super Bowl XXV 1991 National Anthem, Tampa Stadium, 73,000 people, live, one take, a cappella, my voice led. No guitar to hide behind, just voice and pressure. The context? Nation watching, Gulf War happening. One mistake, you're done. But I delivered. Could Prince handle that? Whitney paused. Prince? Talented, multi-instrumentalist, but just voice, no guitar, 73,000 people, one take? I don't think so. Prince relies on instruments. Strip all that away? Pure vocal under ultimate pressure? That's my territory. February 2004. Prince reading the interview. Whitney Houston said you can't do a cappella under pressure. Need instruments. Prince smiled. Whitney Houston, vocal legend. That Super Bowl performance? Historic. But she's wrong. My voice is my first instrument. Always has been. He set the magazine down. MSG show, February 20th. Invite Whitney. Front row. This will be a cappella night. Whitney thought Prince's instruments were safety nets protecting vocal weakness, but she was about to discover they were simply additional colors in a palette where voice had always been the primary brush. Madison Square Garden, New York City, February 20th, 2004. 22,000 tickets sold out in hours. The arena buzzing with unusual energy. Word had spread that something special was planned. Front row VIP. Whitney Houston, elegant in a black evening gown, her posture perfect, confidence radiating, ready to see if Prince could handle vocal pressure without his instruments. 8 p.m. Concert began. Musicology. Call My Name. Full band, full production. Whitney watched professionally. Great show, but where's the a cappella he promised? 8:50 p.m. Cream finished. Prince took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, royalty is here tonight. Whitney Houston. The voice? Legend. The crowd erupted. Whitney stood, waved gracefully. Prince smiled. Whitney, last month you told Entertainment Weekly something about me. I did. I said it truthfully. You said I can't do pure vocal. No guitar, no safety net, that I rely on instruments. You're multi-talented. But pure voice under pressure? Different skill. I did it. Super Bowl, 73,000 people, one take. Prince's response was respectful but confident. You did. Iconic. But Whitney, may I show you what my voice can do? No instruments? Whitney's curiosity showed. I'd love to see that, but Prince wasn't ready to demonstrate yet. First, he wanted Whitney to show 22,000 people what true vocal power looked like, establishing the standard he'd need to meet or transcend. Prince made an unexpected invitation. But first, would you show us? That Super Bowl moment. Here. Now. Whitney was surprised. You want me to sing? The anthem? Now? Please, show them what vocal power looks like. Whitney stood. Respectful applause. She walked to stage. Prince handed her the microphone. The band fell silent. She took a deep breath, the kind of breath only trained vocalists know how to take, filling lungs from bottom to top, preparing the instrument, then began. "Oh, say can you see," national anthem. Similar approach to her legendary 1991 Super Bowl performance, but with 13 more years of maturity. Sustained high notes with operatic power that filled every corner of Madison Square Garden without seeming to strain. Perfect pitch without instrumental guide to reference. Emotional delivery that created visible goosebumps on arms throughout the arena. Controlled vibrato showing mature technique earned through decades of discipline. 4 minutes of pure vocal mastery. 22,000 in reverent silence. Final note. Sustained 8 seconds, never wavering, classical training at absolute peak. When she finished, Madison Square Garden exploded, standing ovation lasting 10 minutes, people crying, recognizing vocal perfection. Whitney bowed, emotional. This was her territory. Prince applauded with genuine respect. No competition, just recognition of mastery. Whitney had just set the standard: operatic power, sustained control, emotional precision. And now Prince would need to respond with something equally masterful or admit she was right about his vocal limitations. Prince walked to Whitney, the entire garden watching this moment between two legends. That was perfection, vocal power, sustain, emotion. "That's why you're the voice," Whitney smiled, grateful. "Thank you. But now, may I try? My version?" Whitney's curiosity deepened. "Your version of the anthem?" "My version of a cappella vocal performance. Different song, different style, but same challenge. No instruments, just voice." Prince turned to his band. "Leave the stage. All of you." The band looked at each other, confused. This wasn't rehearsed. This wasn't planned. But they followed Prince's direction, exiting stage left, while 22,000 people murmured in confusion. Prince stood alone. Center stage, no guitar, no piano, no drums, no bass, just one microphone and the weight of Whitney's challenge. The stage lights seemed brighter without instruments to share their glow. He looked out at the sea of faces, found Whitney in the front row, her expression curious, confident. "This isn't the anthem. This is something else." Then he began, his voice emerging from silence like prayer. The song was gospel, unexpected choice. But Prince's approach to gospel was unlike anything Whitney's traditional training had prepared her for. He started in low register, baritone, rare for Prince, whose falsetto was more famous. But his low voice had depth, richness, gospel soul that came from years studying church music. The sound resonated in his chest. You could almost see the vibration. Then something strange happened. Prince began singing call and response, but he was calling and responding to himself. Multiple voices from one person, low baritone asking questions, mid-range tenor answering, creating conversation through vocal technique. Whitney leaned forward. "He's singing multiple parts. By himself?" The technique intensified. Prince's voice building, layering, creating the impression of a choir when only one person stood on stage. Mariah Carey watched from the audience, surrounded by regular concert-goers. Her eyes widened. "I've hit whistle notes, 5-octave range. But this is different. This is architectural, building harmony from one voice." Prince had just begun demonstrating that his voice wasn't one instrument, but many, each voice serving different musical purposes, and Whitney's classical training was about to encounter experimental techniques she'd never studied. Prince shifted registers. The gospel baritone disappeared. His voice moved upward through his range with the fluidity of someone who'd spent decades mapping every possible sound his vocal cords could create. Falsetto, his signature register, the voice that had defined countless Prince recordings. But this wasn't recorded falsetto smoothed by studio production. This was raw, live, pushed to limits that demonstrated why falsetto was his primary vocal identity. His throat muscles visible as he shifted registers, high notes matching Whitney's range. But the technique was completely different. Whitney used chest voice pushed upward with operatic power. Prince used head voice, lighter, more agile, capable of movement where Whitney created sustain. You could see the difference in how their bodies carried the sound. Rapid runs, melismatic phrases that moved through multiple notes in single syllables. Whitney's style, but faster, more complex, creating melodic patterns that felt more like instrumental solos than traditional singing. His breath control invisible but absolute. Then Prince added something Whitney had never encountered in classical vocal training: vocal percussion, beatbox elements integrated seamlessly with the melody, his mouth creating kick drum sounds while his throat maintained the melodic line. Two completely different sound sources from one body, 22,000 minds collectively blown. He's doing drums with his voice while singing? Whitney stood up slowly, not from excitement, but from disbelief. Her classical training had taught her breath control, pitch perfection, emotional delivery. But this was different. This was treating voice like electronic instrument capable of producing sounds human throats weren't supposed to make. The percussion intensified, Prince's chest becoming bass drum through throat manipulation, his mouth creating hi-hat sounds through precise air control, and somehow maintaining melody through all of it. Mariah leaned to her companion. "I thought I'd explored the upper limits of what voices could do." He's not exploring limits, he's ignoring them. But Prince wasn't done proving that his 40 years of vocal training had taken him into territories Whitney's operatic approach had never needed to explore. Have you ever thought mastery meant perfecting one technique? Whitney spent 25 years training her voice like classical instrument: power, sustain, control. Prince spent 40 years treating his voice like synthesizer, discovering every possible sound, every unconventional technique. Both approaches create mastery. Which resonates with you? Share your thoughts. Prince entered the final 2 minutes of his a cappella performance. Everything he'd demonstrated separately, gospel baritone, falsetto screams, vocal percussion, multi-voice harmonies, began combining simultaneously. Low gospel moan as foundation, the kind of sound that comes from deep in the chest, spiritual rather than technical. The sound black churches had been creating for centuries. Layered over that, high falsetto scream, not replacing the low sound, but adding to it. 2 registers from one person at the same time through harmonic overtone techniques, vocal percussion maintaining rhythm, his mouth creating beats while his throat created melody and harmony. 3 distinct sound sources that shouldn't be possible from single human body. Then Prince demonstrated something that made Whitney's jaw literally drop: throat singing, the Mongolian technique he'd spent 10 years studying, creating multiple pitches simultaneously through precise control of throat muscles and tongue. Position, harmonic overtones ringing above the fundamental pitch, creating chord from single voice. Not harmony through recording and overdubbing, but actual multiple frequencies generated in real time. Whitney's hand went to her own throat unconsciously, as if trying to understand how the anatomy worked. Her vocal training had been comprehensive, but never included this, never suggested this was possible. The final 30 seconds approached, Prince building toward climax that would either solidify his demonstration or collapse under its own ambition. The garden held its breath. He took a breath, deeper than any Whitney had seen him take, his chest expanding visibly. Then began the final sustained note, 12 seconds. But this wasn't Whitney's sustained power in single register. This was something else entirely. Starting low in baritone register, then moving upward through his range while maintaining the note, passing through tenor, entering falsetto, continuing upward into head voice, then back down. All one continuous breath, one sustained sound moving through 3 octaves, like voice was simply flowing through different rooms in the same house, his body swaying slightly with each shift, conducting himself. Whitney stood completely still, her mouth open, tears forming, hand unconsciously touching her own throat. That's not humanly possible. 22,000 people erupted, not just applause, but shock, recognition, understanding that they'd witnessed something that redefined what they thought human voices could achieve. Prince had just proven that vocal mastery isn't single dimension. It's multi-dimensional space where power, agility, experimentation, and tradition all coexist, and mastering one dimension doesn't negate the validity of exploring others. Whitney walked to Prince, emotion showing. "Prince, I've been singing 25 years, trained vocalist, and I just heard vocal techniques I didn't know existed." Prince's humility genuine. "Whitney, your voice is power, sustained notes, vibrato, emotion. That's mastery. But you just did 5 different voices in one performance. How? Because voice isn't one thing. Voice is instrument. Like guitar, you can play it many ways. I trained my voice to be powerful. One sustained note. You trained yours to be a synthesizer? I trained my voice to be curious. Every sound I heard, gospel, throat singers, beatboxers, I asked, can I make that? Can I combine them?" Prince addressed the garden. Whitney sang anthem, operatic power, classical technique. Beautiful. I sang gospel with falsetto, beatbox, throat singing, experimental technique. She's right. I use instruments. But my first instrument is voice. 40 years training it. Whitney's voice equals power. Mine equals agility. Both valid. Both mastery. Whitney took the mic, vulnerable. I said Prince can't do pure vocal. I was wrong. What he did wasn't singing. That was vocal gymnastics. I sustain high notes. He moves through. Octaves. I hit one note powerfully. He hits 5 simultaneously. That's not hiding. That's expanding what voice can do." She turned to Prince. "You didn't prove you can sing like me. You proved you can sing like nobody else." Whitney's recognition wasn't defeat. It was expansion of her understanding that vocal training has no final destination, only infinite directions to explore. Whitney made an unexpected request. "Can we do something together? Your style plus my style?" Prince smiled. "What song?" "Gospel. You lead. I'll follow. Let's see what happens when power meets agility." What followed was 4 minutes that created new sonic territory. A cappella gospel duet between 2 completely different vocal philosophies, learning from each other in real time. Prince. Falsetto lead creating melodic foundation, vocal percussion maintaining rhythm, multi-voice harmonies filling spaces, experimental approach that treated the song as playground rather than museum piece. Whitney. Power. Harmonies anchoring Prince's agility. Sustained notes providing stability while he created movement. Classical training bringing gravitas to his experimentation. Trading phrases. Prince would sing with soul agility, voice moving through runs and techniques. Whitney would respond with operatic power, single notes held with strength that made the building vibrate. The 2 styles shouldn't have worked together. One was exploration, the other was perfection. One was, how many sounds can I make? The other was, how powerfully can I sustain? But together they created something neither could achieve alone. Whitney's power gave Prince's agility weight. Prince's movement gave Whitney's power freedom. Final chorus brought both together. Whitney chest voice and Prince falsetto, perfect harmony, sustained for 10 seconds. 2 completely different techniques creating unified sound. 22,000 people witnessing history. 2 vocal legends, no instruments, pure voice, different approaches, to same art form proving that mastery has multiple valid expressions. Backstage, 1 a.m. Whitney curious. The throat singing. How did you learn that? Tuvan throat singers, Mongolia. Studied 10 years. Wanted to add to my vocal palette. Vocal palette. I never thought of voice that way. I thought, train one style, perfect it. That's beautiful approach. Classical. I approach voice like synthesizer. How many sounds can I make? Entertainment Weekly. I said you hide behind guitar, but you don't. You have so many instruments. Voice is one of many. Voice is first of many. Guitar, second. Piano, third. You specialized. I diversified. Both valid. February 21st, 2004. Whitney on Oprah. Prince sang a cappella. Did things with his voice I've never heard. Falsetto, beatbox, throat singing, simultaneously. He showed me I've only explored one vocal technique. There are infinite types. 2012. Whitney died. Prince's Grammy tribute, gospel a cappella, his dedication. Whitney showed me vocal power. I showed her vocal range. Together we proved voice is limitless. Miss you, sister. 2016. Prince died. Whitney's family statement. 2004 MSG, Prince proved voice has no boundaries. She sang with operatic power. He sang with experimental freedom. Both were right. Both were masters. Mariah Carey, later in interview, I watched Whitney and Prince that night. I've hit whistle notes, 5-octave range, but Prince did throat singing while doing falsetto. That's not just range, that's reinventing what vocal cords can do. Whitney had power. Prince had possibility. Together they had everything. Prince didn't defeat Whitney's vocal philosophy. He expanded the definition of vocal mastery to include both her classical power and his experimental agility, proving that training your voice to be perfectly controlled and training it to be infinitely curious are both paths to artistic excellence that serve music in different but equally valid ways. The most powerful voices aren't always the loudest. Sometimes they're the most curious, the most experimental, the ones that ask, what else can this instrument do? Whitney mastered vocal power through classical training. Prince mastered vocal possibility through experimental curiosity. Both were right. Both were masters. Share this story with someone who thinks mastery means perfection rather than exploration. But this wasn't the only time Prince proved that his instruments were tools of expansion rather than shields of protection. There was another night, another challenge, another moment when someone questioned whether Prince could handle pressure without his signature weapons, and Prince's response proved that true mastery means being able to thrive in any condition, with any limitation, because the art lives in the artist, not the tools. That story begins with a critic who said, Prince needs his guitar to be Prince, and Prince's response changed how we understand the relationship between artist and instrument forever.